prompted this bill to go into
So
effect?
this was an effort to combat hepatitis C, and who I was working with was the Red Cross. The Red Cross is one of their priority bills, and so what we're working towards, we actually passed this legislation back in 2014 in the Senate. We passed it, it didn't pass in the Assembly. So there was a little bit of talk about it, but unfortunately you guys weren't brought into the mix, which was obviously a big problem.
Of course.
So the intent of the bill is really to make sure that we codify some of the rules that you as professionals are already doing. When you look at the rules on the books, it kind of seems out of date. You say, oh wait, single-use needles, I mean, that's not in law. If you did have someone that wasn't abiding to the standards, they're not breaking the law, which was kind of absurd. You know, so it looks at that common sense. I think what happened was it went a step too far when people that don't know about the industry really are trying to say, oh, well, the single-use inks got added in there. That was something that I think just got through without the industry really seeing.
So there was no lobbying behind this?
No, I mean, there was no lobbying on the tattoo side, on the industry side. It was really just a public health debate. And that's really all that it consisted of. We had a big organization like the Red Cross working to pass the legislation, and no opposition came up about it.
Just want to state that even the Red Cross's bloodborne pathogens with regard to tattooing is substandard. Just saying.
And as a Red Cross instructor for that, when I do my instruction for bloodborne pathogens, I have an entire separate book. Like, I do the Red Cross because that's what I have to do. When it comes, I have an entire separate book that I follow to instruct tattooers and tattoo artists, depending on how you prefer to be called, to let them know how we can and can't do things around you.
Well, and that's why I'm so excited that you guys have all met with me today, because that's really how we grow. We work together, we form these solutions, and until now, we didn't have a relationship, so I didn't know what was going on here. And my goal is going to be to make sure we increase the standards of the profession, to make sure that people like yourself that have dedicated your careers towards doing this are safeguarded, if you will, that you don't have unscrupulous actors setting up shop in New York, but people that have the standards that you expect. That's what we want to continue.
This industry has a lot of unscrupulous actors.
Well, that's what we're trying to make sure that
Unfortunately, they're not really in the industry.
Right.
Because
I'm sorry, just one. I know Wes had a question before we get into something like that. Wes, you had a question?
Well, it seems to me that the justification is attempts to prove that there's something wrong with the bottom of the pig. In other words, it became contaminated once you opened it. Of course, that's not supported by any evidence at all. No more than chlorine getting through the air into the cup.
Right.
Is so multiple use containers. It has been the standard for 30 years. And there's never been a problem. There has been a problem with mixing things into the ink, or making the ink out of such as, for example, tap water. New York City has a law that we have to use sterile water, and we're mixing it with the water. That's about it, and that solved all the problems.
Yeah.
So there really is, our procedures right now, without any more formalization, are adequate to protect the health of the community. We really don't need much more. We already know what it is. So it's like, why are we doing this? And there's also the financial aspect where artists have thousands of dollars worth of inks.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we.
I have millions. What am I supposed to do? Throw that away? I mean, who's going to compensate me for that? Do I have to do something to get the money?
Yeah, and those are all great points, and those are things that we've heard now and realize that there's flaws here. And that's what we're working to amend that, to change it, particularly, the ink side. We want to keep the single-use needles, and we're working to do an amendment so that it won't affect the industry. Because that's what we've realized, that many people, like it was explained to me in the back, about just the quality of ink that's been brought to our attention. And the intention of the legislation wasn't to do that. I think it just went above, and that's what I was saying, where the idea had started with single-use needles. It's common sense. And then the holdup, I think, was on, this cross-contamination, and I think it was people getting involved in an issue that they didn't really know, but thought that this was the solution. And it shows by not talking to the experts or having you involved in the process how that did happen. Now that you are, I think
it's 30 years. I have a tattoo shop for 30 years. And
so you have the tattoo shop and your supplier.
Yes. and there's really no problem. I mean, it seems like everybody is using single-use needles.
Yeah.
We've had single-use needles and sterilized for 30 years.
Right.
It's nothing new.
The single-use ink caps had been brought out before, and they totally failed because no one liked them. But now, single-use tubes and single-use needles, without any legislation, were said, "Here, look what we got," and they went like wildfire through the tattoo community. Everyone used them themselves without anyone telling them we have to, because they were good.
Yeah.
It benefited the client and the tattooer.
Yeah.
Where they tried with the single use and it didn't work because it's total fear.
If I can add something, every tattoo shop has an autoclave. We sterilize all the stuff that we're going to use. Prior to single-serve plastic, disposable tubes, we used medical-grade stainless steel tubes. A lot of people like to use them. I like to use them. It counterbalances the weight of the machine. We scrub our tubes, we put them in an ultrasonic, we dry them, we bag them into a sterilizer bag. It goes into the autoclave. Our autoclaves, we have to, in Suffolk County, I don't know about everywhere else, we have to send spore tests out to make sure that our autoclave is working. There's a little blue dot on the paper which also says, okay, this has been autoclaved. In my shop, we open everything up right in front of the client and we explain it to them. This way, when they leave, they can't say, well, I don't know if that guy used a new needle. I don't know if he gave me new ink. And the problem being is, I'm surrounded, and so is everybody here, with people that are working out of their house. I will do that $200 tattoo for you for $80. I got my kit on eBay. I got my kit on Craigslist. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not certified. I'm not inspected. I haven't gone through any courses. I'm just going to say, if there's 1,000 tattoo shops in New York State, which I'm sure there's way more than that, then there's 50,000 people tattooing out of their house. And every day, coming into my shop, there's people going, is this pus supposed to be coming out of my tattoo? How come I got all these pimples? Oh, where'd you get tattooed? Oh, my friend Joe out of the shop. He's a great artist. He knows what out of his house. So that's what we're contending with. And we get the bad rap. We get the hardship. Here we are, we're paying our taxes, we're just trying to earn a living, raise our families. We go through all the stuff. My health department says you have to have a spring on your bathroom door.
Right.
I'm like, why? Well, because of the microbes. I'm like, well, what are they being locked in the bathroom? They're holding them hostage in there?
Thanks.
My doctor doesn't have a spring on his door. My dentist doesn't open up his needles and drills and stuff.
We gotta start.
I apologize.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. I want to make sure everybody gets the time to
Of course.
talk. I mean, you
I don't mean to be the hog.
Did you have something?
No, I just wanted to say, I had a store in Elmwood for 45 years.
You know what?
I'm still there.
Oh.
Never had it. We've always used new equipment. Even from the 1970s.
You don't really have to police the professionals.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We've been doing it for decades like this. It's, so it's
We love our job. And
Yeah.
we want to keep it.
Of course, yes.
We're all dedicated a lot of time and knowledge, trying to learn as much as we can to do it right. Our family members, our children don't want to do anything wrong.
Yeah.
To lose what we have at this stage, and that's why we're very concerned about this. We feel it's just wrong.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I'm really glad to meet everybody here today and hear your ideas and your concerns, because I'd like to stay in contact with you in the future so that we can work together to strengthen the profession.
Yes.
And make sure that we're safeguarding against the problems that we're talking about, and making sure that the public is protected and the professionals are protected at the same time. How do we make sure the government is working in an efficient way?
Sure.
Right, with you. Yes.
Are you looking to possibly create a tattoo advisory board, which I advise that you do,
Okay.
so that you've got the input from a handful of people, not just one or two, but a core group of tattoo artists. offer sane advice.
Okay.
As long as it's democratic, we're all.
Yeah, right.
And that's why, as I said before, that when we made the appointment on last week, that it was important that I didn't speak for all of New York State.
Well, right, yeah,
Because
sure.
who am I? I'm this chubby, tattooed, bearded guy that has a small shop in Rockland County. I'm not the entire New York
Right.
State. I'm not ink manufacturers from all over the country. You know, and that's why it was so important for all of us to be here.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Appreciate you coming down.
Yes, sir.
I just asked, it seems to me it's a very simple solution, since it's on the books and there's a law.
Yeah.
Just have the health department say, well, okay, we're not going to interpret it as prohibiting what's already on the books from, say, New York City. And it's a very simple solution.
You're talking about the bill that's will
Yes.
go into effect.
Just as
Yeah, that's what we're-
interpret it, not to prohibit.
Right, that's what we're working on towards, but I think what I'd like to do is clean up the law, because I don't want that on the books when we know it's such a big problem. You know, going forward, I think we can make an amendment to make sure it's strong, something that we can agree on, that makes common sense and codifies things of law. So you don't have to worry about health departments in each county or being different.
Can I just make a
Please.
comment about advisory boards? APT tried to establish themselves in New York City by writing themselves into our law itself.
And
Fortunately-
APT, you're talking about,
Alliance of Professional Tattooers.
okay.
Fortunately, we saw this coming, but kind of on the late side. They did it from the beginning, like ahead of time. So I would strongly urge that there be no advisory board appointed.
Okay.
That you take maybe a consensus of tattooers across the state rather
Yeah.
than,
Well, that's why I
one
think
group
not like a
having
formal
control.
thing, but if we can get on like emails, I'll give your contact info. This way we can stay in the loop, and when things pop up, you can email. You can say, hey, Senator, see this? This could be a problem, or this is something that we need to look at. That would be very helpful to have your
Because
expertise.
we're all involved in this day after day,
Absolutely.
week after week, year after year.
Well, it's so important. What I try to do is, I do that. I have advisory committees. Like we have a veterans advisory committee, we have a senior advisory committee. And we try to do that because when we're passing laws in New York, we don't want what happened. What we see, this is what happened here without the input of professionals on the front line. And that's where you come up with these mistakes. So that's why I'm thankful that you guys are proactive and saying, what can we do now? Instead of, we could probably complain about the past, but we're saying, okay, well, we are where we are. What do we do now? And that's been very helpful. So we'll make sure that we try to stay in contact and we communicate with you what's happening in terms of the interpretation from the health department and also on doing a chapter amendment to the legislation.
And to help with that, I do have right here a sign-in sheet where we can put our names, our emails, and our phone numbers if we choose to be contacted. If you do not want to be contacted about this, you do not have to. But I was thinking more of like an informal,
Yeah, very informal.
connection to, so that way we can assure everything.
Yeah.
Everybody gets taken care of, whether it is, in one way or another. That's why.
That'd be great. If you give me your email and your contact info, I'll send you out an email so you have all my info, and it'll be a good link for us. You can just reply back with if you have further suggestions or you want me to see something. And then if you don't mind, if you want to just mark if you're a supplier or manufacturer, or, that'd be great. You don't have to put that.
Suppliers
Just
or
your
manufacturers can just put a star next to their name.
yeah, that'd be cool. Just so you know.
So there is work being done to amend the ink part of the language.
Yes.
So that's already in the works.
Yeah.
I know you had a meeting yesterday
Yeah.
about it. So.
Yeah, I did. I met with
Bridget and Kyle.
Yeah, I met with them and was talking to them about it, and that's where I think this would be good, so I can send around and make sure that you guys see that, so that if you have concerns, you can say, hey, I looked at this and this is kind of confusing. You can tell me.
It kind of confused me how this whole game came to be, and in that, myself, I work as an elected official down in Long Island.
Oh, you
for
do?
a fire district. And
Oh, great.
When we do codes and we're writing new things, we have to meet with an alphabet list of different organizations, fire service, EMS organizations.
Yeah.
And for something like this to pass and to be put through, we never feel, at least in Suffolk County, I don't know if anybody else in the state feels it, we never feel represented.
Yeah.
There is hardly even a cursory glance given to any of our organizations that exist. not everyone's on board with APT. There's other organizations as well,
That's
but they're
probably-
there,
right.
and they're more than nothing.
Yeah.
So, how do we go about making sure that they're included on an official basis rather
Yeah.
than? I mean, not opposed to an informal committee, but I feel.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question, and it's something that,
At least APT and NTA and other organizations do represent the
Right.
whole of the community to
well,
some
you'll
degree.
see
but-
in Albany and the same down in DC, there's groups that form to make sure that their interest is being heard.
Right.
And obviously, and it's still, you have groups that are fractured on issues, whatever they are, but sure, whether it's environmental groups or labor groups or I've been the chairman of the Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities Committee, so we have special advocacy groups for that. And so that's why I think a good first step is just for us to have a good communication link where we can share each other's email, and that would be helpful.
Of course.
And then on a further level, maybe it is something where, that's why I asked about the organizations that you work together, just to have someone, if you want to, just to monitor what's going on, because there's so much going on. 1,000 bills pass through Albany every year. Same in Washington, and a lot of them we aren't concerned with. It doesn't affect our daily lives. And then occasionally there's something where you say, hey, what's going on? So
I
that's
just feel like we get glanced over a lot, and if you look
Sure.
at other organizations like the dentists have the ADA, and
Yeah.
you can see that they're definitely powerful and working, because now, according to this law, we're going to have to open up all our needles and tubes in front of the customer, which is a good thought, good idea, but now it's law, and yet your dentist, that's all open. I mean, these are the kind of things that we're seeing. I think it would be a good idea if we had more official representation
Sure.
inside these bills.
Thanks, Rob.
If I could, sorry. If I could just add, on January, the bill was brought before the assembly.
Okay.
So how do we, we weren't even aware that something like this was being brought in front of the assembly. How could tattoo artists be up to speed on when something like this, is there a place we can look?
Well, I would always recommend on any issue, what I always think is the best way to advocate is to go and meet with your local assembly person or senator. And I always recommend you say, hey, you call up and say, hey, I live in your district, I'd like to meet with you. And most assembly personnel and senators will say, okay, sure. And this person's passionate enough to reach out to me.
To be contacted by mine.
Oh, really?
Who's about 3 blocks down.
Okay, in New York City?
No, in Long Island.
Oh, okay. Well, that's unfortunate to hear, but
It
that's
is,
why I find the case more frequent than not that your assembly person or senator. And I just say that for any issue because then it puts a face to it. Like, you've been in business for 45 years. That's a great story to tell, and you want to make sure that your local representatives know that you've been, on Main Street America for 45 years, helping the community, doing a valuable service that people want. That's good to tell your story. I know it's not easy all the time. I'm in the business, that's what I do, and you're working, keeping your doors open. But I say that's where the networking is great. You guys have a great network, and you can work to expand that beyond in the community. Whether it's through the local chamber of commerce, to join the local chamber and be a member of that, just like the other stores are. You deserve a spot there as well. And I mean, everybody's mentality is different, but those are some of the things that I think you would say. Look, we're adding a benefit to downtown, Pearl River or wherever it is.
There was some confusion about how this bill went through. Like Richie said, that January 12th or whatever, in January, the health department submitted their recommendations, and then it went through the process. But February 22nd, that law was now a law, but nowhere was anyone informed of it. And then we're amending a law signed by the governor. We're amending a law that's not a law, that's not enforced. This was extremely confusing
Sure.
to follow. So to me, it seemed like it was out of order on the way
Well-
things should have been processed. My observation
Yeah.
as a layperson.
No, I mean, that's how it works. That's how the laws become passed, how a bill becomes a law. But yeah, I think there could be things that make it better. Sure. Would it be nice to be able to make sure that everybody knows about legislation and they're informed and they have their input? Any way we can do that, I think that's a thing that we should embrace.
Well, up until about February, I watched what happens in New York State when it comes to the law, and I've been
Oh.
watching since the health department did a little survey, and that was what, 5 years ago or something, we heard nothing more. So I've been on guard, but this year I couldn't be on guard.
Oh, okay.
So my advice to everybody else is be on guard.
Right.
Go to the New York State legislature and you can find information, type in tattoo.
opensenate.org.
Yep, that's great. That's great.
All right,
Resource.
Cliff, you had a quick question?
In Suffolk County, we went before the legislators, a bunch of us tattoo artists, because we had a supplier that was going into the parking lots of the 7-Elevens and opening up his van and selling tattoo equipment out of it to anybody, underage kids. This was creating a lot of problems. So we all got together, we went and spoke to a legislator, and we had a meeting. Now what they did was they said, well, since this is concerning the tattoo industry, we have to send a letter out to every single tattoo shop in Suffolk County and any suppliers so they can come down and we can have a hearing. That's why I'm surprised this didn't take place. I know New York State is big, but you would have thought something would have been put out to reach one of us. Now, we had our hearing. A law was passed that because we are licensed in Suffolk County, you can't sell tattoo equipment to unlicensed people. If you're a beautician, you have to be licensed, and that's the only way you can buy professional equipment. Tattooing, I go on Craigslist,
Right.
I go on eBay, and that's your health hazard.
And that's something that I've heard as I've talked to tattoo
That's
artists
your
about this.
that's your
And I don't know
outlet.
how you, and I would love to work with you on ways to tackle that problem.
Well, you can't buy guns on eBay. Somebody put a stop to that.
Right. So
You can't
maybe
sell
there's a way that we
Nazi
can find that.
paraphernalia on eBay.
Mhm.
You know, maybe New York State should say, hey, you can't buy tattoo equipment on eBay. You can't sell it on Craigslist. You can only purchase it if you're a licensed professional. I mean, this is just my point of view. Maybe people here have a different point of
Right,
view.
and that's what it takes to say, you know.
Just one more question.
Richie, you had a question?
Senator, what can we expect on December 12th?
Well, that's what we're working towards, to see, to make sure that everything is implemented smoothly, that there isn't a disruption in the industry. And that's what we're working towards, and that's why I'd like to make sure that we can communicate going forward. So as soon as I have details, I can be able to.
Yeah, can I follow up on that? Like, what would be the procedure? So you would you delay the bill from going into effect? Because my understanding is that you guys don't reconvene until January,
Right.
which is obviously a couple of weeks too late.
Right.
So what
that's
happens?
what we would have to work with in terms
How
of
does that
regulations being implemented.
So how does that happen
Well,
if
that's what
there's
we gotta-
nobody there to make it happen? You know what I mean?
Well, legislatively, right. So there's a difference between the legislation and the regulations. And that's what we have to work with the Department of Health, just to make sure that the regulations are not being implemented as far as it would disrupt the industry. So that's what we're trying to figure out those details.
So some kind of official order put forth to the Board of Health saying
Right.
delay any action on this law until it can be amended in January.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay.
Right. Very good. And the same thing for ink manufacturers. I mean, we're in the process of buying all different equipment,
Yeah.
you know, so that we could do this. And like I said in there, hey, I'm going to make 5 to 6 times more money if this law passes. But I'm standing up against it. It's no good.
Right.
It's no good for
Well, yeah,
tattooing.
please make sure you sign in. That would be great. And we look forward to working with you in the future.
Does anybody have any other questions about like with the ink or the law or anything? Yes, sir. State your name. I'm sorry.
Well, my name is Ed, I'm from Backstage Palisades Road, so I run a shop that has a lot of traffic.
Okay.
And it's not, I can understand the shop is outside of the street, so mostly when you see a tattoo shop, in shops like these, you get a lot less families and walk-ins and kids that come in.
Okay.
So I'm checked by my county health department a lot more. They come in my store, they ask questions, they have kids that try to get a piercing at 17.
Okay.
You know, they come and check it out. So is there any way that you guys can have somebody that's highly educated in the tattoo industry, that knows and understands the laws, that can actually teach the lawmakers how everything works? What's sterile, what's not sterile, what's a good option, what's a bad option? so that the wordings in the laws won't be misunderstood. Because if my local health department sees that law, they're gonna enforce it on me. And I'm the one that's gonna pay for something that might have been misworded or misjudged. Because the public, when they see a law like that, especially in my store, they're gonna ask questions.
Sure.
So,
But now we have
if
an
you guys
open
can have
law.
somebody that,
Yeah.
that knows about, you know, how to be sterile properly and how to run a good tattoo shop, maybe an expert in the tattoo business, that can actually maybe help you guys, inform you guys, you know?
Right, no, that makes sense.
Thanks, guys. Anybody? Bill, do you have anything you want to add?
You know, part of the reason I drove here from Baltimore is not so much because I'm a supplier, but because I'm a tattooer as well, and I see this as it's worded as a bad law, and I see it setting a precedent, and I think a lot of eyes around the country are on this right now, and people want to see something smart come out of this because it's going to affect tattooing.
Right. Okay,
That's,
good.
that's really it.
Because as New York goes, the rest of the country usually goes.
Yeah.
It has less to do with. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
It has way less to do with me being a supplier. Like, I can accommodate that, as Mr. White said. I can accommodate that. But a bad law is a bad law, and there's a difference between having an option to do something like some sort of single service thing, not necessarily the one described the way I hear it. There's a difference between having that option and having that be the law. You know, and maybe having it as something. I just don't even, you know, it could be done, but I just think the bottom line is it's a bad law. Or badly worded.
Right, well, that part, yeah.
God bless.
All right, well, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
Really
you for
appreciate
coming.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think what would also be great if we were able to, I'm sorry, I'm really bad with names. Jordan, if you could take a picture, I'd like to get all of us, because I mean, this is a pretty important thing that's happening right now. Well, I would like all of us in the picture if we could.
Yeah.
So if we could go out front and, you know, kind of get in high order and kind of work that out.